G'day guys, Mac with the Circle, and welcome to the last episode in getting started in the Horus Heresy. Now don't take this as a bad thing, this is a good thing, because we're going to be moving on to more Horus Heresy content, looking at more advanced list building, things to look at, incorporating rites of war into your force, that kind of thing, which is, important. We're also going to be looking at different combinations, allies, fortifications, lords of war, all that impressive stuff. Today we're kind of going to dip our toes into that, because we're dealing with the Sisters of Silence, the second half of the Talons of the Emperor. So, obviously on the last episode, we looked at the Adeptus Custode. Very, very strong faction unto themselves. And today we'll look at the other half of that army list, which is the red-headed step-sibling. Because the Sisters of Silence are crap. And I don't mean like they're terrible, but they don't make up for anything the Custode lack. See, Custode all have adamantium will. They're not terrible against Psykers, and to be honest, Psykers are not going to crush their forces. Whereas Sisters of Silence are good against Psykers, but they're not good against anything else. And it's a very sort of open-ended statement. A lot of people will probably say, "Oh, Mac, they've got access to a lot of power weapons, they've got bolt guns, power armor. They've got good things." Well, they do, but they don't. And I'll explain my line of thinking as we go. So, let's start with their special rules. First of all, Psychic Anathema, which is a very bizarre special rule. Because I get where it's going in terms of gameplay, but it makes no sense when you think about it in the context of the world they live in. Essentially, Psychic Anathema means that all your Sisters of Silence units with the rule are immune to psychic powers cast against them, and if they're fighting a Psyker who's using something like telepathy, maybe using the old invisibility special, psychic power, that kind of thing, they ignore the effects of it. Cool. It doesn't sync up, however, with something like Psyker picking up rocks with telekinesis and throwing them at you. The rock is in the air. Now, whether that rock is affected or not by psychic power because it gets near a sister, it's still going to fucking crush her when it lands on her. So, it's not well thought out in that regard. But it's that sort of compromise between gameplay and fluff, I guess. But I don't like it. It's not a very good special rule as such. More, I think it should just be something along the lines of can't be targeted by a psychic power. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much into it. They also have a special rule called Ex Oblivio. Now, this is for sort of your HQ level Sisters of Silence. And any independent character, or anyone actually, psychic of any kind, within 6 inches of a character with this special rule, does not generate warp charge. And if they want to use a power, they have to take a leadership test prior to casting and risk suffering the perils, and if they suffer perils, it's at -1. So, very easy to die. On a 1 or a 2, your cycle will just get removed from the game. Very, very strong special rule, but even as a Thousand Suns player who has fought in close combat with Sisters of Silence, hasn't affected me really. I've just gone, okay, I just won't use psychic powers on him. I've still got a Praetor of the Space Marine Legions. He will still kick your ass. And yeah, he still kick their ass. They also have a special rule, Fanatical Discipline, which means they are all fearless and they all hate Psykers. Yeah, makes sense. Company Cadres is the last special rule, which is essentially you can create different groupings of Sisters of Silence revolving around 3 units to each HQ, and you get special rules for doing it. It's not super important, really, how it works. Can gain Infiltrate, Crusader, Stealth, +1 combat res, those sort of bonuses. Yeah, they're cool, they're fluffy, that kind of thing, but again, to invest in it, you need to take 3 Sisters of Silence units and a HQ for each one, and it adds up fast. So an army would need a full 9 Sisters units and 3 HQs in order to make the most of it in like a 2,500 point game. It's just ludicrous. Alright, So that's the basic rules of it down pat. Now, we're going to quickly look at some of the models, and then I'll explain the problems I have with the army itself. So, obviously, for a HQ option, Janisha Kroll, Knight Commander of the Silent Sisterhood. The only character model they've got at the moment, unless you're going to use the plastics, and the plastics do not lend themselves to too much creative conversion work. Not unless you know how to use green stuff. You're very good at kit bashing, that kind of thing, because the way the cloaks sit on their bodies, the way the shoulders interact with the arms, the upper arms are part of the torso on the miniatures. There's a lot of chopping and changing and have to do so. Trust me, it's just easier. Go out and buy this model. If you're like me, I use the Inquisitor Greyfax model from 40k, the one with the crossbow, and got rid of her head with the inquisitorial broad-brimmed hat and replaced that with the Silent Sister's head, and she makes a good HQ as well. Especially because state crossbows are a Sisters of Silence weapon. Alright, so you got a HQ now. There are two HQ options. You've got your choppy sister, who's like a Space Marine Force Commander type thing, and then you got your Command Squad style unit. I think most people are prone to just taking the choppy sister. It's less points, and you can more easily integrate her into other units. Very good to buff Custode squads, that kind of thing, which is often what they're used for. Then you've sort of got a range of units which you can use for your troops. You can use bolt guns, you can use the swords, you can use the bolt pistols. None of them are particularly good. The swords are... They're capable of fighting Marines. They're essentially all armed with chartable sabers, and unlike sort of Sisters in 40k, Sisters of Battle that is, not Sisters of Silence, you don't have prayers, you don't have any buffs like that you can use on your units. It is literally down to the raw stats of you. And something I've really tried to emphasize in the past is that 30k is the place where power armor goes to fucking die. There is so much AP3 out there, and there is so much stuff aimed at killing toughness 4, and this is an army of toughness 3. You're slightly cheaper Marines, yes, but you're also more brittle than Marines. Whereas the Solar Auxilia have their Void Hardened, they have a lot of really awesome war gear, really strong supporting elements like big tank squadrons, super heavies as heavy support choices, that kind of thing. The Sisters of Silence, they have none of that. And yeah, they have a transport, and it's good. The Red October here, the Sisters of Silence Charon Pattern Inquisitor, is a really strong unit with essentially a crap load of autocannon shots and some missile launcher shots with psych out on their missiles. Fantastic unit. It's a very expensive transport though, like a Land Raider is. And it can only transport Sisters. Can't transport any bulky units, which greatly limits what you can put in it, such as Custodes. So the Red October isn't too much help to you. And in your heavy support, the most powerful weapons you can bring to the battle are Flamers, or you can convert them, because the kits aren't out there yet, to have grenade launchers. I suggest using the Cadian grenade launchers from 40k. But each to your own. But you can buy them for really cheap on eBay, or you can go onto sites like Puppets War, Cromlech, Anvil Industries, that kind of thing, and any of those will be able to help you out with parts. Now, grenades, not very good at killing things, apart from maybe rhinos, probably the heaviest armor they can kill. Yes, those same grenades can kill psychers very easily, because they have the psych out rule. Every hit causes a perils check on a unit which has a psyker in it. That's incredibly strong against psychers. Anyone who's familiar with Horus Heresy knows how rare they are outside of Thousand Sons and Word Bearers armies. They basically just don't exist. So what you have here is an army of Space Marines that aren't as good as Space Marines, that are really good at fighting psychers in close combat, but are otherwise useless against them. They have no way of reliably taking down anything which is Terminator armored. They have no way of killing, period, things that are as tough as Land Raiders and Spartans. Can't even penetrate one or glance one frontally if they're flare shielded, even with their most powerful weapons on their transport tanks. So essentially, the army is fundamentally broken at some point. And that's sad to say, but it is. So why am I doing an episode where I've said Sisters of Silence aren't played as part of a Custodes army, they're their own thing, and they're terrible? Why am I doing an episode about this? Because the strength of the Sisters is allying them into other forces. Cheap units with power armor that capturing, great with something like the militia. Great with the Solar Auxilia, a bit of power armor interspersed with their units. Strong. The ability to fight Psykers, something those armies lack. Strong. Why not naturally pair them up with Custodes, some people say? Yeah, you can. But then you may as well just play Custodes, because Custodes don't really have any weaknesses. The Sisters of Silence aren't really shoring anything up. They don't add anything to the Custodes force. There is nothing they do, realistically, that's worth taking them over more Custodes. Maybe putting Custodes Dreadnoughts into a Sisters of Silence army works, but it doesn't seem right, does it, to put a whole bunch of Custodes Dreadnoughts, for example, or Custodes Grav Tanks into a Sisters force. Essentially what you have here is an army that only works as an allied detachment, and that's really what it should have been when it was first created by Forge World. Shouldn't have been a part of the Custodes. Should have been something like the Knights Errant, which is something we haven't really covered yet. But a force unto itself, something you can just ally into any Imperial aligned faction. So, if you are going to click the Sisters of Silence, know these limitations. Please know these limitations. You can get a lot of troops for cheap that are scoring. You've got some decent characters, in Janisha Kroll, or as generic Sisters HQs. They can't... Don't expect them, apart from Janisha, to fight a Marine in close combat. A Marine Praetor will chop you down a lot, especially if it's something like a Blood Angels, World Eater, Empress Children, those sort of combat-oriented Praetors. They'll give you a horrible time. Even a Thousand Suns Praetor, you go, oh, really strong against Psykers, until the Psyker goes, okay, I just won't activate my Force Weapon, I'll just bludgeon you to death with a Power Axe instead. With 7 attacks, strength 5 against your toughness 3, weapon skill 6. Like, a Marine will just cut you down every time. So you can't fight them on that level. Instead, ally in Knights, ally in Militia, ally in Solar Auxilia, ally to Marines. Sisters of Silence units in a Marine army can be really strong. Just a Sisters HQ and a unit of troops, for example, can add a little bit of something that you might be lacking. So that's the way to do it, guys. Don't treat them as a big part of the Talons of the Emperor army. They're not. They're an allied detachment, in my opinion, that you put with something else. And those that I have seen run them, such as Andrew Hollis, when he runs his Sisters of Silence, he runs a whole bunch of Inquisitors full of them. Like, every unit is mounted in Inquisitor transport. That's the Red October. Standing by. And he runs a stack of Knights with them, because the Knights make up for the fact that they can't kill Terminators, they can't kill Marines, they can't kill tanks. Yeah, Knights are really good at those things. So that's how you do it. Anyway, I'm back with the Outer Circle. Thank you all for watching. Next up, we're going to start doing something more interesting with the lists when we look at 30k next. See you all next time.